Okay, so I've got my completely kind of knitted head and body here. I'm going to start to join the head seam and the neck seam. Okay, so that's this bit. Look at this little raccoon here. That's that bit there we're going to join next. So find your neck marker and your lower neck marker. If you're following my colour guide, these are the little baby pink ones. And it's a little triangular seam. Fold it together with right sides, knit sides together, and just sew that little seam all the way down, working on one side at a time. So that's that seam there. So there we are, I've sewn that seam together. So if I turn it around the right way, you can see that little, you can barely see it actually, it's so fluffy, the yarn, but there we are. So there's those two markers, and I've sewn that seam right up to what I label as the split. Okay. So the next seam to sew is joining the front. So this is the front to that neck seam. So we've still got one little marker left. This is our neck marker, and we're going to join the neck marker with the front to neck marker. This is the front to neck marker. Again with right sides together. Okay, that creates like that little angle at the back of the neck. So join those together. So here is that seam at the neck. Listen to the neck seam, both neck seams sewn together. That's the first one, and this was the second one that we did. That creates like a sort of curve in the shoulder as well, which is quite nice. So the next seam, which will work similarly to the other ones, so right sides together, these are the foreleg seam markers. So that's the top foreleg seam marker and the bottom foreleg seam marker, and just join those together and sew that from the markers to the split as you've done before. So then you've created this lovely shoulder seam here. So quickly go over what we've done. We've sewn two neck and front to neck, and then also the foreleg seams. They've all been sewn. So the next bit is to work on the hind legs. So this is our foot of the hind leg, and with wrong sides together this time because we're going to work mattress stitch. We're going to join the cast off edge. So we've folded the cast off edge of the foot in half, and we're going to join those two halves together, which will become the sole of the foot. And then after that we're going to join all the way around sort of the foot upper, joining those two row ends together. So here's my first little foot. So that's the sole joined together with mattress stitch, and this is the foot upper. And I'm just going to work it nice and smooth and flat with my fingers, because later on we'll do some little embroidery sort of lines to create sort of toes. Okay, so that's one little foot. There's a little bit of shaping at the ankle as well, if you remember this short row, so I'm just going to ease that a little bit as well to get a little bit of shaping going there too. Okay, So the next bit is to find this pink marker here and this red marker here. So this is the inner hind leg marker, and this is the hind leg split marker. So you're going to match those two together with wrong sides facing. So bring it underneath the leg. So this is just the left leg I'm working on. Match those two markers together, and then see those blue markers there. Match those two together too. So that's your bottom hind leg seam marker and your hind leg marker. So if you're following my colour guide, it's the pink to the red and then the blues together. So if I twizzle that around, you can see that seam I'm going to sew together, and you'll see that this one is quite a bit shorter than this one. So you're going to have to ease that together. I would say it's like fitting a puff sleeve into an armhole. So you have to ease that seam. You might find it easier to pin it together first. So I'm going to join this mattress. I'll show you how it's done. I'll just remove that pin because it's kind of in the way now. Almost there. Take that pin out as well. So there are the two markers, and that's filled in. And so that is more like a sort of bulked out top of the leg, and this is the inner leg. It's a little bit sort of flatter. So the leg is almost finished. So the very last bit is just to sew this seam, which is like the front or the shin of the hind leg. And if you like, you can start stuffing the leg as well. So you can get some nice stuffing in the foot to start creating that shape. Okay, so here's the leg all finished. That seam at the front of the thigh, and this lovely seam here, which is the thigh seam. Sorry, did I call that's the shin? Shin, thigh. And the next thing you're going to do is join these two markers here, which is the bottom hind leg seam marker and the top hind leg seam marker. And you're going to very carefully mattress stitch this seam all the way up to this split here. So you're actually joining this edge onto this seam very carefully. And this is what creates this really nice thigh seam here. And you've got a nice little sort of pocket here as well, which you can add lovely stuffing in to create that thigh. So this is quite interesting. So this shows you what it looks like from the inside of the leg. Okay, so that's the top of the leg, and this is the inside. And you've got this seam which you'll later sew the belly to. So you've got a nice bit of area there to stuff the leg all the way down. That's all open at the moment. Okay, so the very last seam for the back of the body, before you do the belly, is to find these two orange tail seam markers. So you've got your tail seam marker, and this one is the hind leg to tail marker. You're just going to join those together and then join that seam, that little V seam there, with mattress stitch. So this is the belly that I've picked up between the markers at the tail, and place markers all along, which will tally with the markers along the back. And the first seam is this, quite a funny seam, this one. What you're going to do is you're going to find your first marker, which I've labelled inside leg markers, and these match with this top of this seam here. So you match that together and then mattress seam along there. And then after that you're going to find this blue one. And now this is a really tight seam and there's going to be quite a bit of easing to do here because it's got to fit in there. But if you look at the one I did earlier, it actually creates like a nice sort of dip which kind of pulls the legs together like that. So it does work, although it might seem a bit strange, it does work as a seam ultimately. So I've sewn that seam there, and now I'm going to join this funny seam here. Pull it up a bit. So match those two markers there, and ease that already sewn seam onto that row end. It's quite tight, so you have to work very carefully with it. But I mean, you can pin it if you like, but it's such a small seam, the pins are just going to get in your way, I think. So I'm going to remove this because I think this is going to get in my way as well. And just start at that seam first. And then work a mattress stitch along the belly bit. So if I get even closer so you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm at the seam. There's a stitch actually at the seam. And then the belly row end. So there's the seam again. And the belly row end again. checking I've got enough distance. And then I'm going to just work a few stitches just to get those two markers together. Together like that. Just come around the edge onto the belly and onto the back. There we are. Because you're going to sew that seam in a minute anyway. So there's a little bit of leeway here. So it's broken anyway, but if I just leave that little bit, I'll finish that off in a minute just to show you that seam. There we are. That tucks in eventually, and the leg sort of tucks over the top. So it's a good opportunity now to stuff the leg if you haven't already done so, and certainly stuff this thigh. A bit of stuffing before you work on do exactly the same on the other side. Okay. So we've got inside thighs in place. There's the belly, and what's quite fun in this, if you put your hand in there, you can see how the legs work quite nicely. So I'm going to stuff the legs a bit more in a minute, but I'll just show you the next seam, which is to match these two foreleg markers with that remaining inside thigh. And you're going to ease, a little bit of easing, because that top bit is a little bit bigger than the belly. Ease that seam together. That's the next thing to do. So I've sewn the belly to the back, in between the hind leg and the bottom of the foreleg. Nice bit of shape there. So the next bit is to join the outer foreleg to the inner foreleg. So leave this seam alone at the moment, because you'll need that to be opened out when you sew the feet, the foreleg feet. So the next seam to do is the top of the foreleg. Okay, so match these two markers together. This is the front to the neck, and the throat markers. Match those two together, and then match the inside foreleg top with the foreleg marker. Join all along there. Now there's a bit of easing to do because the outer edge is longer than the inside edge. So if you want to pin that together, then do so. I think I might pin mine actually. Just there and there. And then mattress stitch that together like that. So there's that foreleg top seam, right the way up to the throat, and right the way to the edge of the foreleg. And you can see why I said leave that seam open for now, is because it's along here that you'll pick up for the foreleg feet. So hopefully now you can see how it's all coming together. This is little forelegs, the throat shaping, the belly shaping, and you can stuff the body up to about there if you like. It's always nice to start stuffing because then you can see how the shape is coming together. So these are the little paws and the hind forelegs rather that I've sewn. So basically you've got something that looks like that. That's the seam. So you fold it and join the sole edges together, then join the back of the leg all the way up to the top. Now when you've done so you've sewn the back and the back of the leg, and then this little bit of foot here, so you bring that, so you've got the seam there, that's the seam, bring the seam to this split here at the front of the foreleg. Okay, so you actually bend it, and then you're going to sew these edges together on either side, so creating like a sort of triangle, so that when it's finished it kind of looks like this, and you flatten it out with your fingers and put little toe markings on it and you'll get a nice shape foot. Okay, so we reached the face part and the head and the chin and the jaw. So this is that nose band at the top that'll run at the top of the head, a bit like this one, a bit like this one here. So it runs at the top of the head. Your aim is to try and get it beneath. In fact, mine isn't very good on this one. This was like a prototype really, but it's to get it beneath those eyebrows, which will be slightly raised. So I'll try and get it better on this one. You're going to find the end, the sort of cast off edge at the end of it there. I'm going to work a couple of stitches to join it into this split here, which is where you divided for that muzzle bit. These are your nose markers. I've still got those in place at the moment. Okay, so that end cast off edge just fits in here, and then just work a stitch to hold it in place. Okay, so I've sort of sewn it down. Now I did say in the pattern actually the sort of ochre colour that I use for this band, if you can substitute it for the beige mohair if you like, because you only need that tiny amount. So if you've got some in your stash, then great, but if you haven't, don't go out and buy extra, because it'll still look really nice with a bit of beige, or maybe any other mohair you have in your stash. It's only a tiny bit. So the next bit, we're going to flip it all inside out, and this is your eyebrow row edge, and you're going to join, it's quite fiddly, you're going to join that band. So you're going to join this band to the row end, each row end of the eyebrows. So there's your nose marker. You can take those out if you like now. And just join it all the way along, closing that gap. So I've done the one side. That's been back stitched to join it to the eyebrow and to the very front of the nose. And now I'm going to do the other side. Okay, so there we are. Just a little nose band done. And then the next seam to do is this nose seam, which is quite simple. Just fold that cast on in half, back stitch along, and then turn out to the right side for the nose seam. Okay, so there's the nose seam, which will be covered with a nose later, so don't be too concerned about that. The next little seams are joining the chin point from the belly up to that nose seam. From the markers to the seam at the nose and the chin point. So I've worked the one side, joining from the chin and muzzle markers. And now I'm just going to do the other side. There we are. I can't. I don't know whether you can see that little seam that runs all the way around there, and there's a little chin. And then the following seams are quite straightforward. You match marker for marker and just join all the way down those two last jaw and neck seam. So if you do that on both sides, stuffing the muzzle and the head at the same time. Oh, and don't forget to put the eyes in. I almost forgot. Eyes, put the eyes in there before you've completely sew the whole thing up and then forget you haven't put the eyes in. Disaster. So I've popped the little eyes in, and so I've got that seam there, and now I'm going to put the nose on. So here's the nose. Okay, so that's the cast off edge, and this is the cast on edge. So I'm going to fold it. So there's row ends. These row ends here. Fold them in half. and sew along that edge. Okay, and then do the same to the other side. Sew along that edge and then turn it out the right way. Okay, so here it is. So this is the cast off edge. This bit here that's going around my thumb. So I'm going to turn it out through to the right side. So these little seam bits here are actually where the row ends were. Do you see what I'm doing? And this cast off edge, that's the top and the sides of the nose, and this was the cast on edge, and that becomes the bottom of the nose. I'm just going to push those little yarn ends. In fact, I'm going to trim the yarn endings, because I don't want much. I don't want the nose to be too padded. Okay, so this then will fit over the edge of that seam, and the bottom of the nose will lie, so the bottom of the nose will lie just above that mouth seam. I don't know whether you can see that in the light. I'm going to really carefully sew all the way around there onto the nose. Now these are my ears. If you don't want to go through the extent of putting all the different colours in, you can just do just that grey, just keep it all grey if you like, it's up to you. So what you do here is trim all this excess off, because you don't want really any stuffing inside the ears. So I'm just going to trim those down. Okay. Then I'm going to fold the ear up to that. Just tuck those in. That cast on edge there. Okay, and then I'm going to join this cast on edge all the way around that row end, so it kind of brings the ear in like a little curve, like that. So it sort of curves the back of the ear around. And that's kind of how you want it to look, sort of like slightly concave. You can pull it in, if you look at lots of photos, some of them look like they've got ears a bit closer in, maybe at different angles, but that, you know, that's your prerogative. And it's nice that they all look different, I think. Let's just finish off this little edge bit here. Yeah, there she is. She. I've just got to do the other. There's a little highlight there, see? And you see that there's eyebrows, just a little bit, not too much. That little bit of expression in the face. So he's all finished. Just take a tour around so you can see what everywhere looks like, every bit looks like. So that's their head. See how much stuffing I've used. It's quite soft. I've emphasised the little cheeks a little bit and the muzzle, but kept the neck quite excuse me, kept the neck quite soft, and emphasised these little bits as well, but kept the body quite soft too, so you really can pose her around, twist around, soft tail. As I say, it's up to you how much stuffing you put in, but please don't overstuff because it kind of loses all its shape. Little feet. Like I say, I'm going to change. In fact, there's not a lot in the legs, to be honest. Maybe I should have put a bit more in the legs. Although I quite like them. They're quite soft. And they can sort of bend over a little bit, which is quite nice. And here are the two ears in place. I'll show you at the back of the head. There we go. Cheeky. So, and there's the nose. Yeah. Paws. I need to put some I did those in brown. I think actually I might prefer them in black. And the same with the little hind legs. I think they might be better in black. I don't know. To see about that. So there he is. He's quite floppy. I didn't overstuff him, I must say. But he's nice. He's very poseable. And that's it. Thanks for watching.